Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We have a special presentation for you today because there's a verse in there's a paragraph in the translation of Phaladeepika which is mind-boggling. So I know a lot of you in the past have asked, what's the good translation? Honestly, there's basically one translation of Phaladeepika going around by Subramaniam. Everywhere else that you find Phaladeepika, it's just cut and paste from that, as far as I've seen. In any case, this particular translation has a really there's a very confusing paragraph in the first chapter. So let me read it to you, and then let's dive into it and see if we can make sense out of it. So here we go. I'm going to switch this to this. And here's the 8th shloka of the first chapter of Phaladeepika, the way that Subramaniam translates it. It says, the signs Vrishabha, Karkata, Dhanus, Mesha, and Makara rise with their back. Pṛṣṭodaya. Mithuna and Meena come under Ubhayodaya, and the rest appear with their faces and are termed Pṛṣṭodaya, signs. Well, the translation is actually not so confusing or anything, except for the Hindu word titles for the signs. But there are some problems with trying to understand what they're talking about there. Now, let's look at these other two paragraphs. This is where it gets really confusing. The Pṛṣṭodaya signs and Mithuna belong to the moon and are termed nocturnal rashis. The other 6 belong to the sun and are termed diurnal rashis. That's got a problem too, because it makes no sense according to the way anybody else in the universe thinks about nocturnal and diurnal signs. So we're going to have to try to figure that paragraph out. And then this last bit, the third bit, is really, this is really mind-boggling. The 4 signs counted from the Rashi last passed or left by the sun are in their order termed Urdhva, or tending upward, Uddha, beneath or under, Sama, even or level, and Vakra, bent or crooked. The same holds good in the case of the other 8 signs. All right, so let's take this apart. Basically, there's 3 categories being discussed here. Remember, we're in the chapter where Bantreshwar is telling us basic information about zodiac signs so that we can understand what they symbolize. And he's like told us, here's how the zodiac signs represent parts of the body, and then here's how the zodiac signs represent places on the earth, and then here's how the planets are related to the zodiac signs. And I skipped one little category that I'll come back to next week. Here's how the symbols of the zodiac signs can be categorized. And now he's got 3 new things here. Here how they are, 1, head first, like forwards. Some of the signs are head first or forwards. Some of them are feet first or backwards, and some of them are sideways. That's one category. Head first, feet first, sideways, or forwards, backwards, sideways. The second category of signs is daytime or nighttime, or solar or lunar signs. And then the third thing that he's talking about in this one shloka is whether the sign moves up, down, straight, or crooked. So let's get to the bottom of this. First, let's work with this first concept. So here I've mapped out for you what he's saying about the first concept. He says Vrishabha, which is Taurus, Cancer, Dhanush, which is Sagittarius, Mesha, Aries, and Makara, Capricorn, rise with their back. So you see I've labeled them with a blue backwards arrow and B. So those are your backwards signs, according to this translation. And then he says Mithuna and Meena, which is Pisces and Gemini, they are Ubhadaya, which they rise sideways. They're sideways. Or neither back nor front. Or both back and front. And then he says that the rest of them are head first or forward signs. So you could see that's the map. That's what he's saying. You see there's not any particular pattern. Which is weird with zodiac signs. There's never patterns with nakshatras because everything is about how this star looks and that star looks. But with zodiac signs, it's all about numbers, patterns, and all that stuff. So it's very weird to see something like this where there's absolutely no pattern. So let us now look at the translation. Let me just see if you guys have any initial questions. I think we're okay. So here we go with a check on the translation just for the first part. So the actual text. So this is also nice because now you'll get a chance to see what a Sanskrit astrology book actually reads like, and you'll get to see kind of how mysterious it could be. So what he says, what Mantreshwar actually said, is Gokark Yashvaja Nakrabha. Anyata Nryunmi now Pure. It's actually Go Karkyash Vajanakra Bhanyata Nryunmi now Pure. Rashaste Pṛṣṭodaya Kodaya. Now let's take that bit apart. Let me just show you what each word means. So it starts off by saying Go. Go means a cow. Cow is Taurus. Now at the end of the line you see it says Ba. So he's going to say, I'm talking about the constellation. I'm talking about the zodiac signs. So the sign of the cow, which is Taurus. And then Karki is a crab. So the sign of the crab, which is Cancer. Ashva, that's a weird one. The sign of the horse. That's a strange one because previously he referred to Danu. He referred to it as Danu or a bow. Sagittarius. He's talking about Sagittarius here. But it's strange that he calls it a horse. But undeniably, he called it a horse. Because he previously categorized it as a human sign. But anyway, he says the sign, Taurus, the sign of the cow. Cancer, the sign of the crab. Sagittarius, the sign of the horse. Aja, the sign of the goat, which is Aries. And Nakra, which is the scorpion sign. That's Scorpio. This is those, what is it, 5? Those 5 signs. 1, 2, yeah, those 5 signs. Anyatas. Anyatas means other space. So besides those 5 signs, Nryuj is Gemini. Yuj means couple. Yug means couple. And Nri means dancing. So Gemini is a dancing couple. And I don't know at what point in time they became little boys that are twins. But in the original classical astrology, it's a man and a woman dancing. And so, as you can see evidence of that, even here in the 14th century, at least he's referring back to them as Nryuj, the dancing couple. That's Gemini. And then Minao, the 2 fish. That's Pisces. Pare. Besides those, the Rashis that are besides those, they are Pṛṣṭodaya. They rise backwards. They rise with their feet, or they're born with their feet or something. Udaya, rising. That's how they rise. All right, so you can see this is complicated. Let's break it down into what he's saying. He's saying, first he makes a group of signs. He makes this group Aries, Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. Now, why did I put Nakra in bold? Because this is where the author made just a simple mistake. The Supermanian made a simple mistake and read it as Makara. So he's saying that he's swapping in Capricorn for Scorpio. So that's one of the mistakes. But when that's corrected, you get this group of signs. Go, Kark, Yeshvaja, Nakra, Bha is Aries, Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. That's his first concept. Then he says Anyata. Besides those. The signs besides those, ones that I've just named. So that means you got those, besides those 5 signs, it means there's 7 other signs. Those are Gemini, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So now he's saying these signs, the signs that are in number 2, are the ones that he's turned your focus to. He named the signs that are in point 1, and then he says the signs except those, besides those. So that leaves us with the signs that are in number 2. Then he says, again, except, Pare. Except for 2 others, except for Gemini and Pisces. So that leaves us with 5. Leo, Virgo, Libra, Capricorn, and Aquarius. Would almost make sense. It slightly does make sense. Then he says, those signs that we finally identified in point number 3, those are Pṛṣṭodaya. They rise backwards. That's what he's saying. So this implies that the first group that he named are the opposite of rising backwards. They're rising forwards, although he never gives the term Pṛṣṭodaya, or head first or forwards. He doesn't give that term. But by naming them and then saying besides these, he implies that this is another group, which would be the opposite thing. And then by naming Gemini and Pisces, that's a second group that's different from both of the other ones. That implies that Gemini and Pisces are a third group, which is Ubhodaya, which means they're sideways, or they don't. They're both forwards and backwards. And so the whole translation boils down to this. You get 3 categories of signs. One of them is backwards, rising backwards. One of them is rising forwards, and the third group is neither. And the way that the signs fit into those categories is the way that you see at the bottom of the screen. Hopefully you see it. Leo, Virgo, Libra, Capricorn, and Aquarius are backwards. Aries, Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, and Sagittarius are forwards. And Gemini and Pisces are in neither category. Now this is practically the complete opposite of what Subramaniam translated. So let's compare that. The way that this maps to an actual wheel, it's like this. You can see the green arrows pointing forward are the forward signs. The blue arrows pointing backwards are the backward signs. And the equal signs are the neither signs. Compare that to what the translation says. And you can see that the only place where our translation check agrees with the translation is Gemini and Pisces. And then, by coincidence, it agrees with Scorpio and Capricorn, because he got 2 mistakes. The translator made 2 mistakes on Capricorn and Scorpio, so 2 mistakes cancels out. The first mistake is that he mistook Nakra for Makra. And then the second mistake is that he mixed up the groups. So now, how did he do such a bad translation? It's not that difficult. This is a really, really confusingly worded shloka. It's not that difficult to make a mistake with it. And also, he might be trying to just match the prevailing opinion about which signs are forwards and which signs are backwards, which might result from a previous mistake somewhere else that we don't know about. Or it may not be a mistake. It might be a mistake in how this is worded. You'll see this is very weird subject by the time I show you everything I want to show you. But you might read, you got this, it says Go Karkyash Vajanakra, then it says Panyata. So the way I take the word Panyata apart, I make it Pa and Anyata. Pa means the zodiac signs, and Anyata means other places. you might take it apart differently and say, no, it's bhani ata, where bhani means it's said, or like a quote, and ata means these. And that would make it maybe flip around to be the way Subramaniam translates it. However, you have a huge problem there, because then what is the pare? The Nriyun Minao pare means except for Gemini and Pisces. So let me try to word it to you the way that the common concept of this head first, back first categorization of signs goes. They would say Aries, Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, Sagittarius, these guys, except for Gemini and Pisces, are backward signs. See, so that's what the original translator is saying. But what does that except mean? Aries, Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, and Sagittarius, except for Pisces and Gemini. Makes no sense, because Pisces and Gemini are not a part of the group. You can't accept for them. So therefore you can't really even entertain that other possibility of interpreting the word bhanyata. So what he's actually saying is Aries, Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, Sagittarius, the signs other than those, except for Gemini and Pisces, are Pṛṣṭodaya. They rise backwards. That's what he's saying. There's another reason why he might want to make this weird translation. And it might be because of the next thing I want to bring up, which is that some people say, in fact, some of the people that did my sidereal tropical debate videos with me, I don't know if they did this in their video or not, but they tried to bring up the point that there's this head first and feet first categorization of signs. And that is a reference to the actual constellation of stars and how it's shaped, and how the imagined art superimposes over the shape, and whether or not that art rises with its head or rises with its feet. And so I'll show you that in a second. And so Taurus and Cancer are basically the surest backwards rising art that you could find. And he starts off with Go Karki, Taurus and Cancer. But then he winds up saying those are the head first signs. So the author might think there must be some mistake in how it's worded, because those are obviously backward signs. So let me ignore the way that it's worded and just translate it the way I know it must be right. That may have also been what he did. So let me show you a little info on that. Literal rising. In case some people argue, what are you talking about? When you're talking about this sign is forwards, this sign is backwards, this sign is neither. What are you even talking about? Some people say they're talking about literally the way that the constellations rise over the east. Some constellations rise head first. Like, take a look at, can you see the art there for Aquarius? So that seems to be, maybe he's rising with his back, or maybe he's rising with his head. So let's take a look at now we can look at the actual sky through this planetarium software and see how they rise. You can see it moving, right? So Aquarius, it's hard to tell. Pisces also, it seems like it's rising head first. Maybe it's not. There's Aries. Can you see the tiny ram? It definitely rose head first. There's Taurus. It definitely rises back first. Then we're going to see Gemini come in all the way to the north. Gemini is kind of feet first, but maybe not. And then Cancer, that's definitely back first. You see the crab is pointing the other way. And then Leo is definitely head first. Now we're going to get Virgo. This is a real killer. Virgo is definitely head first. Definitely head first. Virgo is a gigantic sign, so we have to wait a bit. Then we're going to get Libra. Libra, there it is. I guess that's also its head, right? It's pointing that way. So Libra also seems to be head first. Now all the way down to the south, you see Scorpio. Scorpio was also kind of head first. Now you're going to get Sagittarius rising head first. And now you're going to get Capricorn rising head first. And then you get back to the start again. You get Aquarius, which is kind of head first or maybe back first. Huh? So when we actually do this, the way that we analyze the group is the way that I've put it for you up on the screen. Does that match with the way Subramaniam translates it and like the commonly accepted, if you search the internet for Pṛṣṭodaya Rashi, the information that you'll get, does it match at all? It doesn't match. Does it match the way I've translated it? It doesn't match the way I translated it either. So the only reliable or reasonable conclusion here is that whatever the heck head first and backwards and equal signs means, it has nothing to do with the shape of the constellation, of the stars of the constellation, because that doesn't match at all. Perhaps instead of head first rising east, head first means the head is pointing north. That's another argument. Could be like that. But if you run through this whole simulation again, you'll see Aquarius points north, Pisces points north, but Pisces is supposed to point in neither direction. Maybe it's neither direction because they've got two of them. Aries, I'm not sure which way it's pointing. Taurus, I'm not sure which way it's pointing. It's the head's pointing along the ecliptic. Gemini kind of points north. Where's Cancer? Cancer, we're definitely not sure. It's neither. So this is the way that it will tally up. You'll get no backward signs, no signs pointing south. And so that's obviously not going to match either the commonly accepted translation or the corrected translation. So we got no way of making this match some kind of sidereal stellar picture. We also don't really have a reasonable tropical explanation for it, except that Leo, Virgo, and Libra are on one side. They're in the west. And then the other two signs of that nature are Saturn signs. So that may be what he's referring to as backwards or late. I mean late. And the others are forwards or early, quick rising. And then the Gemini and Pisces are neither or both. And that is the way, the only technique that I've ever seen this used in is in Dasha prediction, where you predict if most of the effects will come at the beginning or the end or the middle of the Dasha. So that may make some sense. There's another tropical way of putting this, and it's very simple. It's where you, instead of Gemini and Pisces, you do Virgo and Pisces. And then anything north of Virgo and Pisces is called head first, and anything south of Virgo and Pisces is called feet first. But this isn't that. I mean, obviously, Mantreshwar is not talking about that. So whatever this is, it's not really explained. It remains unexplained for now. But at least we've ruled out the idea that this is some sidereal reference. And at least we've corrected the translation, so we know what to research. That's all I got for you on that. I have points on the other two categories as well. Let's see if you have any questions about what I've said so far. Alf, no. I don't use this. This is a very remote thing. Right, Baro? So I must have hopefully answered your question there. People say he refers to actual constellation shapes, but he's not, as you can see from looking at the actual constellation shapes. Now, it seems like you guys are too confused about it to ask questions. So let's look at the next topic. The second concept in the shloka is solar and lunar signs. So returning back to the way it's translated, the author says the Pṛṣṭodaya signs and Mithuna belong to the moon and are termed nocturnal rashis. The other 6 belong to the sun and are termed diurnal. Diurnal means day, like the way nocturnal means night-ish. Diurnal means day-ish, where day belongs to the day. Associated with the day is diurnal, associated with the night is nocturnal. So if we map his system out, it's this. This looks a lot more reasonable than the forwards, backwards, and sideways signs. Right? It's not just scattered all over the place and it has a pattern. You can see the pattern, right? There's 4 signs, and then the 2 opposite them are the same, and then the rest of them. It's a bit of a pattern. It's not unbelievable. However, unfortunately, this pattern makes no sense. I'm not sure why I have this black thing on the page yet. Hopefully I didn't mess up my presentation. The problem is that everybody is every classical astrologer is very familiar with this concept of solar and lunar signs, nocturnal, diurnal signs, and it has nothing to do with this pattern. It doesn't look like this pattern at all. So is this one case where Vedic astrology is completely different than Western astrology? Or did the translator just do a terrible job? Let's find out. So if we check the translation on this part, Samituna, Pṛṣṭodaya, Chaindava, Sauraha, Sheshagriha, Kramena Kataratri Dyu, Sangyaha. So he made kind of a silly but forgivable mistake. Again, he made a silly but forgivable mistake. He must have been tired when he did this verse, the translator. In the previous sentence, he mistook nakra for makra. And in this one, he's going to make a big mistake with the word mituna. Let's see. Sa mituna. He thinks it means with Gemini, because Gemini is called Mituna. And so how does he interpret the word sa? Sa means with. So he's thinking, all right, they just made the Pṛṣṭodaya group, the backwards rising group. So that group plus Gemini, which makes sense because Gemini was a exception. We had 5 head first, 5 back first, and then 2 that are neither. So when we group them into 2 categories, solar and lunar, we're going to have to add those 2. We're going to have 6 and 6, right? So the one group of 5 takes Gemini. That means the other group of 5 takes Pisces. You're good to go. So that's what he assumes here. Samituna. But he's not saying anywhere Pṛṣṭodaya. It says Pṛṣṭodaya, which is not Pṛṣṭodaya. Pṛṣṭodaya means to count up or to tally or to take stock. So you can tally as Chaindava, which means lunar, or Sauraha, or solar, all of the grihas, which is grihas are the homes, which refers to the signs. This planets are called grahas and the signs are called grihas. The graha is the one who owns the griha. So what the heck does he mean then with samituna? Mithuna means a male and a female couple. That is very, very important to the concept of solar and lunar zodiac signs. Because actually, that's all that we're talking about. When you talk about solar, lunar, nocturnal, diurnal, you're just talking about male and female. Every sign is either male or female. And thus, every sign is either solar or lunar, or nocturnal or diurnal. And that's what Mantreshwar is saying, actually. Sammituna, as couples, as male-female couples, Sesh Griha, all of the signs, take all of the signs as couples and tally them up, Pṛṣṭodayas, as either Chaindava or Saura, as either lunar or solar, in a regular order, Kramena, Katita, Ratridyo Samgya, and then the solar or lunar will also be described as Ratri or Dyu. Ratri is nocturnal and Dyu is diurnal. So the simple translation is, as couples counted in regular order, all the signs are lunar and solar, and thus nocturnal and diurnal. So if you do that, you get this. The first couple is Aries, Taurus. So Aries will be solar, diurnal, and Taurus will be lunar, nocturnal, etc. So you'll get this pattern, which solves your problem exactly, because this is exactly the pattern that you'll learn in any Astrology 101 from anybody anywhere in the world. So that's a case where, in fact, no, Vedic astrology doesn't have a different concept about this basic thing. It was just a bad translation. So signs, therefore, have this nature to them. Like I think I may have told you this already in the last week. The way when we were talking about how the planets are associated to the signs and why certain planets rule certain signs. It's actually Leo and Cancer, which are the central focus of the signs. And the sun and the moon, they take control of the highest points, the most northerly points, which is Cancer, where it's watery, the moon takes that, and then Leo, where it's fiery, the sun takes that. And then they own all the rest of the zodiac signs, as you can see here on this map. And therefore the zodiac signs have in their fundamental nature either being male, like the sun, and dayish, or being female, like the moon, and nightish. But when the planets come to the sun and moon and ask for their own property to take care of, to live in, then the planets take control of those. And so that's why you have a planet like Mars can get a feminine sign, like Sagittarius. Mars is the super masculine planet, can have a sign which is feminine because it gets one sign from the moon. So that's what he's talking about here. That is a problem solved now. Let me see if you got questions on that. Yeah, good, Bardo. Last time you told us that signs belong to either the moon or the sun. Where's the discrepancy in the two lists? I don't get it. So I just solved that problem for you, I think. Bardo says maybe it has to do with the alpha in the constellation during the rising. Check that for me, okay? Give me actual facts about whether or not that makes any sense. How does it work out that Libra is associated with the sun, but the ruler of Libra is inimical to the sun? It's fine. The sun and the moon control everything. Whether you're inimical to them or not, they're the kings. Just like I don't like Donald Trump, but I'm an American. Doesn't mean I'm not an American just because I don't like Donald Trump and he's the president of the United States. Okay. So Saturn will also have a male sign that he gets from the sun, which is Aquarius. As I said in the beginning, Bardo, there's really, as far as I am aware, there's really only one translation of Phaladeepika right now, which is Subramaniam, and everybody else is just plagiarizing that one or just cut and pasting it There may be more. Yes, Bruchira. Go back and listen to last week's to see what planets rule what signs. None of this crap with this external planets. Steer clear of that. All right, now let's go on and look at this third bit. This is also really cool. This is actually very cool. This is the one new thing that I learned from this shloka. The third concept in this shloka is whether or not signs are upwards, downwards, equal, or bent. And what the heck does that mean? So the way that the author translated this is the 4 signs counted from the Rashi last passed by the sun are in their order termed urdhva, or tending upwards, adha, or beneath, sama, even or level, vakra, bent or crooked. The same order holds good in the case of the other 8 signs. So that's really weird. He's saying, like, if the sun just moved out of Sagittarius, then Sagittarius is upwards, Cancer is downwards, Aquarius is equal, and Pisces is vakra or bent. But that's very strange. I'll tell you, there's a problem with this is temporary. It's going to constantly change. If the sun moves out of Sagittarius, then Capricorn is a downward sign. But if the sun moves out of Capricorn, then Capricorn is an upward sign, which is cool and fine, but it is not at all similar to anything else that's being discussed in this context of this chapter. The context of this chapter is telling you the inherent quality of the sign. It's saying, Aries belongs to Mars. It's not like it only belongs to Mars in September, but in October it belongs to Venus. It's talking about qualities which are inherent in the sign and therefore help you understand how to use this sign. Maybe it's cool and true and right and everything, but it's definitely worth checking the Sanskrit to see if this was a accurate translation or not, because it's weird. So if we check the Sanskrit, it says atramat urdhvardha samavakra bhatitu punas titikshnangshu muktat grihat. So atramat means like this. Remember, this is the third statement in one verse. So when he says like this, or in this way, atramat, it means the same way that you went consecutively in couples to figure out the female and male lunar and solar signs. Go again in that same kind of consecutive way. In that same consecutive way, then you have these 4 signs, 4 types of character. Urdhva, Adha, Ardha, actually. I think did I misspell that? Ardha, Urt, Atra, Madhu. Yeah, it's got an R in it for some reason. Ardha, Sama, Vakra. Those are the 4 kinds. Vakra means crooked or bendy. Sama means equal or same. Adha means going down, and Urdha means going up. Pati, shine. To, but. Puna, repetitious. Puna means to do, for something to repeat. Punarvasu. Tikshnangshu. Tikshna means sharp, biting, or clear. Angshu means the rays of the sun. Muktat means to be released, and Grihat means from the sign. So this is cool. This is actually really interesting. He's saying a sign releases the sun's clear rays. The sun's rays are Tikshnangsha. They're clear and sharp, but they get modified by the sign that they shine through. remember, this is the basis of what a Rashi is in the first place, and why is it called a Rashi? Rashi means the sun's light. So it's really the character, the fundamental thing about the signs is it's the character of the sun in different times of the year. So a sign releases the sun's clear rays, releases muktat grihat from the sign. The sign releases the clear rays of the sun in 4 different ways. They're not clear anymore when they get released by the sign. They accept the rays clearly, but they release them with their own taint on them, like in the same way that a window affects the light that comes through it. And there's 4 ways that it affects the sun, the shine. One is urdhva, the upward, downward, level, and bending. And he says it's atramat and punas. Atramat means consecutive. In this context, atramat means consecutive, and punar means repetitive. So a sign, this is the way that these books were written, by the way. This is really interesting to see how they write these things, because you want to write it in a way that is easily memorizable and short, so you don't add extra words in there, and you put it in patterns, in syllabic patterns that have poetry to them, so the student can memorize them, because there's not Google, and there's not thumb drives of USBs, and there's not even a lot of palm leaf books around. Most of the stuff is memorized. And so what it seems to us today to be like, why the hell did you write it like this? It's so obscure the way you wrote it. There's a good reason why they wrote it like this. It's because it has a rhyme to it, and it has a pattern to it, and it fits into a meter so that it's memorizable. But for us these days, it's like, this is not the easiest way to write a book. But here's what he's saying. A sign releases the sun's clear rays in upward, downward, level, and bending ways consecutively and repetitiously. Look at that. So this is what it maps out to be. If you start with Aries, Aries is upward, Taurus is downward, Gemini is equal or sama, and Cancer is vakra or bending. That's consecutive, and then repetitious means, like what the author said, the same holds true for the remaining 8 signs. So the same pattern repeats in the remaining 8 signs. Gee, does that look familiar? This is why, you know how I am. My thing is, I'm Saturnian type of person, so I boil everything down to the bare essentials and the minimums. And when I teach the signs, all I teach is, here's the gender of the sign. I don't even teach the gender, actually, because the gender is also subsumed into the elements. Here's the rulers, here's the elements, and here's the modes. Those are the only things you really need to know. Because look at this. Every single fire sign, you got a pattern. If you have a repeating pattern of 4 things, then you know it's going to correspond to the elements, because the elements are a repeating pattern of 4 things. So what he's really saying is, fire signs have a certain quality, earth signs have a certain quality, air signs have a certain quality, and water signs have a certain quality. And think about the way that it's affecting the sunlight. The fire makes the sun's energy increase and go up. The fire sign causes sun's energy to urdhva, go up. So fire signs invigorate things and make them more energetic. The earth signs, they're ada. They suck the light down into the earth for the plants. So they pull the sunlight down. So they make it less energetic, but more permanent and more practical and more realistic, more down to earth. And that's the quality of the earth signs. They pull things down to earth. They make things more solid and heavy. The air signs don't affect the light at all. The light just transmits through the air. So they don't invigorate the sunlight, nor do they pull it down and make it more real. They just let it be. When the sunlight travels through the air, it just travels through the air. You hardly notice any effect on it. And then this vakra thing actually makes a whole lot of sense now, because these are the water signs. And vakra means curvy and bent. And that's what happens to light when it goes into water. It gets all curvy and bent. So interpretively, what that means is that the energy of the sun snakes around and becomes more flexible in the water signs. So the fire signs have the quality of inspiring and arousing. The earth signs have the quality of making things more solid and real and practical. The air signs have the quality of being hands-off. They just let the thing be what it is. They don't try to mold it or change it. And then the water signs have the quality of making something kind of circuitous, go around in circles or drift around a bit. It makes the light drift. And it's more exploratory rather than going to a goal. I think this is very, very interesting. So that's it. So I hope that you found that to be thrilling. It took me a while to put it together. Heidi asked if they do something similar for the moonlight. It's the nature of the sign. Because the sign is constructed from the sunlight. That's why he says it releases the sun's rays. The nature of the sign is upward. So any planet that's in a fire sign gets pushed upward in its enthusiasm or its energy, and it may not be good for that planet necessarily. The planet may operate better if it's cool or if it's level. Some planets will operate well when they're brought down to Earth. Some planets will feel too heavy when they're brought down to Earth, etc. Okay, so this is, I think, really cool that you'll see how worthwhile it is to check your sources when you read something. Don't assume that the way that something has been told to you is the way that it really is. Don't assume that it's not, of course, otherwise you will never learn anything from anybody. But when something doesn't make sense, then check it. So this is an example of a paragraph that I came upon in the translation that just didn't make sense. And then when I checked it, I realized, yeah, the guy made mistakes. As far as the solar and lunar thing, that's totally resolved. He made a mistake and we resolved that. As far as the Vakra, Sama, Urdhva, Adha thing, also that was a mistake. I'm not talking about the sun moving out of a sign. Although why would he think so? Muktat. But he's not saying that Bhanu is Muktat. He's saying the Bhati is Muktat. The shine of the sun gets released from the sign in a certain way. So that's also resolved. The only one that's unresolved is head first, feet first, sideways. People have told me that there's other statements in classical texts about this. So I'd like to see those. I'm not aware where they are. I'm waiting for some people to give me actual references to those. And just even what it means is very confusing. We don't know. It doesn't really follow a pattern. So that's kind of unresolved. Maybe, Catherine, you try to figure that out and then let us know what you think. All right, guys, so we'll end it there. And then I think next week I'll just backtrack to the 7th sloka and let you know about the way he categorizes the symbols of signs, and then maybe go forth with the 9th. Hopefully we won't have to do too much of this stuff. Again, otherwise the translation work will be very, very slow. But whenever you might chance upon a section that makes no sense, I'm definitely going to dive into the Sanskrit like this. All right, see you guys on Thursday for the Bhagavatam. And then again next Tuesday for more Phaladeepika. Thanks so much.